This is not a fictional story. It's not a movie plot or an urban legend. This is the true account of a mother who took the law into her own hands, right in the middle of a courtroom. Her name is Marianne Bachmeier. And in 1981, in a packed courthouse in West Germany, she pulled a small pistol from her purse, aimed it at the man accused of murdering her 7-year-old daughter, and pulled the trigger. What followed shook a nation, split public opinion, and created one of the most infamous acts of vigilante justice in modern European history. This is the story of grief, rage, and a mother's final act of love. The victim, Anna Bachmeier. Lübeck, West Germany. May 5, 1980. 7-year-old Anna Bachmeier had an argument with her mother before school. It was minor. Typical. That morning, Marianne allowed her daughter to skip school, a decision she would replay in her mind forever. Anna never returned home. Her body was found later that day, stuffed into a box, discarded by the banks of a canal. She had been strangled with her own tights. The suspect was quickly identified, Klaus Grabowski, a 35-year-old man who lived just blocks away. A convicted sex offender with a disturbing history. He had served time for sexually abusing young girls and had voluntarily undergone chemical castration. But years later, he underwent hormone treatment to reverse the effects. He kidnapped Anna, kept her at his home for hours, and then killed her. The motive? He was terrified of being sent back to prison. Grabowski was on parole. If authorities found out he had taken a child, he could lose everything. And so, he murdered her. The mother's grief for Marianne Bachmeier, the loss of Anna was more than tragic, it was life-destroying. Anna was her youngest child, her only daughter. In the days after Anna's funeral, Marianne withdrew from public life. She did not eat. She barely spoke. Her once vibrant home became a shrine of silence. But what added salt to the wound was the knowledge that Anna's death could have been prevented. Klaus Grabowski should never have been free. He was a known danger. The justice system had failed, not just in preventing the crime, but in allowing a repeat offender to walk freely among innocent children. The pain festered into fury. The trial of Klaus Grabowski less than a year later, on March 6, 1981, the trial of Klaus Grabowski began at the district court in Lübeck. Marianne attended, seated just feet away from the man who killed her daughter. She watched as the defense began painting a picture of a troubled man, as legal arguments spiraled into technicalities. Whispers swirled that his sentence could be reduced. That he might plead insanity. That Anna's life might be reduced to courtroom games and psychiatric loopholes. That morning, Marianne made a choice. She entered the courthouse with a small pistol, a .22 caliber Beretta, hidden in her handbag. As the trial began, she sat silently. And then, without a word, she stood up, pulled the gun from her bag, and fired. She fired 7 times. 6 bullets hit Grabowski in the back. He collapsed instantly, dead on the courtroom floor. Panic erupted. The judge dove for cover. Lawyers screamed. Officers rushed toward her. But Marianne Bachmeier made no attempt to flee. She placed the gun on the table, sat back down, and said calmly, "I did it for Anna." The arrest and public reaction. Marianne was arrested immediately. Her actions made global headlines. Some called her a murderer. Others called her a hero. In Germany, the public response was polarizing. On one side were those who sympathized with her anguish. On the other, those who feared the precedent, what happens if grief justifies killing? She became known as the vigilante mother. Interviews, magazine covers, television specials, Marianne's face was everywhere. For some, she embodied justice in its rawest, most human form. For others, she was a dangerous example of what happens when people take the law into their own hands. The trial of Marianne Bachmeier. Marianne was charged with murder, unlawful possession of a firearm, and disrupting a court proceeding. Her legal team fought to reduce the charge, arguing she acted in a temporary state of emotional insanity, driven by overwhelming grief and trauma. The courtroom once again became a stage. But this time, the woman on trial wasn't a predator, she was a mother. In 1983, the court reached a verdict. She was convicted of manslaughter and illegal possession of a firearm, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. But due to good behavior and public pressure, she served just 3 years. She walked free in 1985. Life after prison. Freedom did not bring peace. Marianne Bachmeier attempted to rebuild her life. She moved to Nigeria with her second husband, later divorced, and lived in several countries, including the UK and Sicily. But she never escaped the shadow of that day in court. She gave several interviews over the years, some candid, some conflicted. She never denied what she did. But she admitted that time and distance had given her room to question it. She once said, "If I had shot him on the street, it would have been murder. But in the courtroom, it felt like justice." In the 1990s, she returned to Germany, living quietly. In 1996, she was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Marianne passed away that same year, at just 46 years old. She was buried beside her daughter Anna in Lübeck, their graves just steps apart. The legacy. The story of Marianne Bachmeier remains one of the most controversial and emotionally charged cases in German legal history. Was it justice? Was it murder? Was it both? She didn't kill for revenge, she said. She killed because she didn't believe the courts would do what needed to be done. And millions agreed. Her case sparked debates that still echo today, about victims' rights, trauma, and the limits of law. What would you do if someone destroyed the person you loved most, and the system failed to act? Would you wait for justice? Or become it? This was the choice Marianne Bachmeier made. And it changed everything. Thanks for watching. For more true crime stories that disturb the silence and ask the hard questions, subscribe to Haunted Syntax. Because sometimes, the most haunting stories are the ones that are true.